This is The Recap, a weekly reflection on the sermons of Fellowship Baptist Church in Mainville, Ohio, seeking to help you make Jesus essential in every aspect of your life. I'm your host, Nate Wright, and I'm here with the preacher of this week's sermon, Brent Wilson.
Nate.
It's good to be here.
Avid listener.
Yeah, long-time listener, first-time host. Big shoes to fill with Ryan out of town for Thanksgiving, but happy to be here and able to fill in so we can make this week happen.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Good to be here with you.
Man, it gives other people hope that, if they're avid listeners as well,
It's
maybe
true.
one day, too, they can host the recap.
It's I feel like I'm part of the Make-A-Wish Foundation right now, so dream come true. It's a good day for sure. So, well, good to be here. I know you and Ryan normally start off with an icebreaker, so I've got one. With it being Thanksgiving week this week, my question to you is, if you could invite anyone to your Thanksgiving lunch or dinner, alive or dead, who you bringing?
Wow.
Okay, hang on. Caveat, as a longtime listener, it can't be Alexander Hamilton. So we got to find somebody else.
Okay. You told me the question was about Thanksgiving, and I really just thought it was going to be like what my favorite Thanksgiving dish was.
I know it's not the vegetables, so yeah.
The country vegetables.
Okay, all right.
But so I had that answer ready, and I don't have this one ready. But anyone in history, alive or dead? It's actually a lot easier.
Okay.
Yes, Liz.
Okay. That's a good answer. Yeah, that I could see that from you too. Sure.
Yeah. What about you?
I'm probably going Abraham Lincoln. All right. I want
Abe.
The guy started the holiday, so figured it'd be good to have him there.
Okay. Do you know how he started the holiday, or why?
Why? I don't know. Was it maybe towards war? The war was coming to an end, and he said, "Let's have a day of thanks."
Well, there's
I'm
a
not sure
lady.
why.
I can't remember her first name, but her last name's Hale. She's a lady who wrote the nursery rhyme, like Mary Had a Little Lamb.
Okay.
And it was 4 or 5 presidents she wrote to, expressing her desire to see Thanksgiving become a national holiday. And she sent poems about it, articulated her reasoning behind it. And Abraham Lincoln was the first one to take her seriously and to do it. And her reasoning was that it would be a good time for us to give thanks for Jesus, for his sacrifice, for the gospel, for God's provision and care. And so her bent on it was particularly Christian. And Abe did it for her.
There you go. He's a good guy. So good president. All right, I did have a second one. Again, obviously it's
If Abe was
Thanksgiving
too
week.
busy?
So yeah, if Abe was too busy, no, I had a second question, second icebreaker. So this is kind of I'm filling in for Ryan. Certainly not replacing him. He's irreplaceable. But what is think of who comes to mind for you when you think of like a replacement that just kind of took over and ran with it. So there were 2 that I thought of, and I'll give you a second to think. The first was Teddy Roosevelt. When William McKinley got assassinated, Teddy Roosevelt jumps in. The guy's on the literal Mount Rushmore of presidents. So he took that opportunity and ran with it. My second that I thought of was Tom Brady. When Drew Bledsoe went down, Tom Brady took that opportunity and ran with it. So anyone come to mind for you when you think of filling in?
My immediate thought was football, and I thought Brett Favre.
Okay.
Same thing happened for him.
Yeah.
I don't remember who he succeeded. And also I'm thinking of the Eagles circa 2017. They went to the Super Bowl, and whoever was the quarterback got hurt, and I can't remember
Nick Foles.
Nick Foles steps
Super
in
Bowl MVP.
and goes and wins the Super Bowl, and then is never heard from again.
Right, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good one. So yeah, a lot of football related ones that come to mind. But all right, well, good stuff.
And hey, big shoes to fill.
That's right.
Nick
That's
Foles.
right. Nick Foles.
Right,
Oh yeah,
Tom Brady.
I thought you meant Ryan's. Yeah,
and his.
His as well. So, all right. So this week we were in Psalm 73.
Yep.
We wrapped up our little mini series through the Psalms, getting ready for Advent, which it's hard to believe is next week. So get your stuff ready. PSA. But just there's 150 psalms to choose from.
Something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
There's a lot.
We're going to say you're not going to repeat, so that whittles the list down to 148 for you for this week. So why Psalm 73? First part, two-part question. Who is Asaph, the guy that wrote it? So,
Okay. Yeah. So, we're calling this the songs of longing because we're longing for Jesus' coming, and we're really kind of doing this as a two-part series. And so, Advent's coming up next week, and we're doing the songs of joy. So, just kind of looking at these two ends of the spectrum, longing forward, and then the arrival and the songs of joy kind of thing. And so, really was looking for psalms that have tension and expectation longing, and there's brokenness, there's an ache, and I thought this psalm did that. There's this, I'm looking out at the world, and I have this conflict, and I have this doubt, and I'm wrestling, and really longing for a day when the fulfillment of, reference Psalm 1 of, the righteous will be blessed. Like, is that true? Is that going to happen? Will the wicked be punished? And so just this longing for the world to make more sense.
Okay.
So.
Yep.
Oh, and who is Asaph?
Who is Asaph? Yeah.
Yeah. Asaph's the worship leader.
Okay.
He is a guy in David's court who is songwriter, worship leader. He's a Levite sort of dude. Not like he's necessarily mentioned a whole lot in the Bible, but he has written multiple psalms. And
is that in the Chosen in season?
He might be
3. Is it the guy? There's one where David and Bathsheba are sitting, and somebody writes a psalm, and they're using just their voices.
But it's a good show.
That's probably
good chance
Asaph.
it's him.
Okay, that makes sense. So, awesome. Well, thanks for some context there. So jumping into the sermon, first point: knowing the right answer isn't enough. So you mentioned Asaph starts off strong. So verse 1: truly God is good to Israel, to those who are pure in heart. So we got a really good start there. Your first point is knowing the right answer isn't enough. Now, I was a C+ man myself in college, so I didn't have a lot of right answers back then. I had enough to get me by, but knowing the right answer isn't enough. So tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Yeah, well, it's not enough because we are not a people that are governed by intellect as much as we think we are or would like to be. I think when we think about this dichotomy between the mind and heart, we think the head leads the heart. Ancient people probably kind of thought backward, that the heart led the head. But really, when you think about the person, I don't really think. I think there's three things. There's the head, there's the affections, and there's the will, what we do. And maybe in the center, if you kind of think of like a chart, you got those things around. In the center is the heart, and so head, affections, and will. And what is on the throne of that heart is leading all three of those areas. Okay, and so when you're thinking about just knowing the truth isn't enough, it's because we're never making decisions purely based on the things I know to be true. We're making decisions actually on what is on the throne of our heart, what I get to later, what we worship. Because what we think is, oh, this is going to save me, this is going to fulfill me, this is going to satisfy me. We actually come up with all the intellectual reasons for that, and then it changes our affections, then it changes the way we act. And so knowing something is actually probably more so downstream of the things of our longings and what we think is beautiful and majestic and going to fulfill us. And so knowing the right thing doesn't help us lead to right action. It's worshiping the right thing actually changes the way we think, the way we feel, and the way we live.
Okay. Is this like a knowledge and wisdom distinction almost?
There's a part of that there. There's a lot of different ways to define wisdom, but if you just call wisdom the application of knowledge, certainly there's a sense in which if we have the right knowledge, the right answers, then wisdom dictates that you live in light of those. You live the downstream or what naturally follows, whatever the knowledge is. I just don't think we always do that.
Right.
I think, it's like, think about, let's just take somebody who's a smoker. They know the smoking's bad for you, or take anything. I mean, I drink soda.
Right.
I know drinking so much soda is bad for me.
Yep.
but I'm still doing it.
I mean, look at I have 2 active minutes right now for this day. I know that I should be
I know it,
exercising.
yeah.
But I've worked and sat at a computer all day.
And so that's just a great example of we have the right knowledge, but it's not actually producing life change.
Yeah.
Why? Because there's something deeper going on. There's a love, there's a bondage, there's an idol, there's a worship of, I think this is going to do something for me, or there's an addiction, whatever the case, whatever you want to call that, something deeper there that's actually guiding my will, my affections. It's not the intellect.
Yeah. So we're not just brains on sticks.
We are not just brains on sticks.
Yeah.
That is true.
I can't remember. I think it's in one of the books. I think it's in a book we've read together. So we are not just brains on sticks, despite what the Enlightenment might tell us. All right. So that's how we start. Your second point, comparison clouds our knowledge of the truth. So in verse 2, Asaph admits that he nearly slipped, kind of nearly had a crisis of faith, if you will. And then in verses 3 through 12, the reason that he nearly slips is because he looked around, fat and sleek people. I don't know what that is. I'm picturing a guy oiled up on the beach in a Speedo. Just doesn't matter what he looks like, doesn't care.
Yeah.
That's what I picture when I hear that. But he looks around. Everyone seems to be having a great time, and life seems to be going well enough, and they're not worshiping God. And Asaph says, "What the heck? Like, doing all this for you, God, and they seem to be getting rewarded, and maybe I'm not." So we know. I think we know conceptually, like people struggle. I think this time of year in particular, like I'm always amazed when the more people I talk to, all families have issues and drama, and even though you may look all nice and put together on the outside, oftentimes that's not the case. People are messy.
Yeah.
So why are we prone to look at other people and think their lives are perfect, and my life, by comparison, is not?
I think it is because we are looking or imagining or longing for the thing that they're giving us a snapshot of. So we see that family, that situation, that promotion, that whatever, and we can intellectually ignore all of the things that we know are true, that they have this perfect family picture, but it probably took them 50 pictures and 2 kids got spanked and one was threatened with being grounded and someone spilt a coffee in the middle of the picture. And we can intellectually ignore all that stuff because we are longing for the promise that the picture is selling us. And so we see that and we're just like, man, I want that. And we can just cognitive dissonance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And trick ourselves into thinking, man, if only.
Yeah. So we could ignore all the other stuff that we know went into that, having taken our own family pictures and knowing it didn't turn out perfect on the first shot.
Yeah.
But
Some
when we look at somebody, some kids got beat. You kids be quiet. We're in the church parking lot.
Kids got beat in a very calm, responsible manner.
That's right. They were fine.
They're fine.
No children were harmed in the making of this podcast. All right. And then you mentioned, social media, I think you've mentioned.
Well, let me say one thing real quick.
Yeah.
As a thing about this. So I don't think I made this super clear in the sermon. So there are, I think, really three categories of things that he's kind of looking at. Mm-hmm. One is the people kind of do whatever they want, right? So they're like living immoral lives, right? They're able to lust after, do whatever they want. And he's like, man, I mean, the appetite and appeal of sin. It's like, man, sure, I'd like to do that stuff too. It feels good, sounds good, looks appetizing. There's an allure to the immoral, the forbidden fruit.
Yeah.
2, there is, I'm suffering and they're not suffering. They are cursing God, but yet everything seems fine, right? And I'm worshiping God and everything doesn't seem fine. And so you get the immoral, you've got the suffering comparison, and then you have they're just getting good things, right? That aren't necessarily immoral. It's like they're getting a promotion. They're having a baby. They are getting married. They are doing successful and making money. Those are just like good things that are fine. And these wicked people are getting them. and I'm over here worshiping God, doing all the right things, and I'm not getting them. And I'm envious and I'm frustrated by what seems like a justice issue.
Yeah.
So,
God is being unfair.
Yeah. And so
is that, would you call that common grace? Like,
yeah, the rain falls on the just and the unjust.
yeah.
Right.
We all, a believer, an unbeliever can both enjoy a delicious steak.
Yeah.
It's just for the unbeliever, that steak, just a nice steak. And for the believer, isn't God good because he made these flavors so that we could enjoy this steak. So the thing kind of terminates on itself versus the believer being able to take it to its conclusion.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Excellent.
Social media.
Social media. All right. So social media amplifies this problem. So this problem's existed since Aesop wrote this however many thousands of years ago. So this isn't a new problem. Social media, puts magnifying glass on it. Not necessarily specific to this psalm, but is there a wise way for Christians to use social media? And if so, what would that look like?
Yeah, let me say on the front end, you're talking about social media exacerbates the problem. Since 2012, when most teenagers started getting iPhones, suicide rates among preteen girls are up 200%. Mental health crisis through the roof. Every measurable statistic for mental health is skyrocketed. And so we can pinpoint social media is a problem. And I think one day we're going to look back, maybe 20 years from now, we'll look back on social media use, and children particularly, but even the way adults have experienced it, and think similarly to how we think now about how we used to give 13-year-old cigarettes. Mm-hmm. And think, that's fine.
Yeah.
And so I think we kind of ignore it and don't really think it's a problem. It's a huge problem. So that's first. Second, how do Christians navigate it, use it wisely?
Yeah, because it feels like if we abstain, let's say every Christian signed off altogether, I mean, everything's going to go downhill even more than it already has.
Yeah.
So,
We're the salt of the earth. We can make it better. I'm not an advocate for the Amish position. Right. Let's just reject all technology or whatever. And so I certainly think Christians can use it, should use it well, and steward it well. One, I don't want to give a blanket rule, right? I don't want to bind people's consciences around this many hours a day or whatever, whatever rule. But you got to know yourself. Mm-hmm. If you are in a season where you are particularly vulnerable to comparison or whatever thing you've got going on, and the social media is particularly the problem, maybe it's just a good time to say, hey, I'm going to check out for a season. Mm-hmm. Like, it's okay to say, I'm going to individually, not putting that on anybody else. I'm just going to say, hey, for the next 6 months, next year, I'm just going to be off of it.
Yeah.
That's fine. I know plenty of people have done that, and it's helped them.
Yeah.
If that's not you and you're not necessarily having that struggle, but maybe it's a time management thing. Like, we spend a lot of time. I saw like sometimes you get these videos, and they're like all these things, and like you can see as time changes, like the graph go up.
Yeah.
And it was like what people spent their time doing. Right, and social media is at the bottom, and it's like 0%. Starts like in the 60s, and family time's up here. TV, all the different hobbies, and it's like social media is down here at the bottom until about 1980, and it starts kind of ticking up, and then it goes, but quickly becomes the number one thing. And so there's also a time waster.
Yeah,
right. I mean, I can get sucked into watching reels, and it's like it's been an hour. What?
Yeah.
Right, and it's just, and I am no more better for all the dumb videos I've just watched.
Learned so much. Yeah, nobody ever gets done. Like, that was a good use of time. Yeah, I'm glad I did that.
But yet I do it again.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so sometimes, I've seen guys say, "Hey, I'm going to delete the apps off my phone."
Yeah.
So I'll only access social media on a computer, right? Which is going to limit my access to it. It's going to help me slow down. You can use your phone and do the things where it's like, hey, time limits a day, mm-hmm. right? So the problem is you can override those,
right?
And so you got to have a little bit of self control. But there are, lots of ways like that. It's like, hey, you got to kind of know yourself, and you just got to come up with a plan.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Is it's easy to just have no plan, and just spend an hour wasting time. Yeah, times 7 days in the week.
Hoping it gets better is not a strategy.
Right. Yes.
You gotta do something.
Have a plan of attack. So, excellent. Good stuff there. All right. So, kind of rounding out the comparison section of the sermon, you mentioned the play Amadeus. So, to summarize, in case you missed it, Salieri, musician, makes a promise to God that if God grants him musical talents and abilities, he'll serve the poor, he'll do all this good. God, I don't know if he says okay, but God blesses him anyways. Maybe he was going to do it anyways, but blesses Salieri, becomes a famous musician, and true to his word, does a lot of good. And then Mozart comes along. Darn Mozart comes along, even more talented musician, a prodigy. Words like that we probably throw them around a little more these days, but I imagine back then we maybe didn't throw them around as much. So clearly talented guy, zero regard for God and his law and moral living, off just doing whatever he wants. So, almost a picture of Psalm 73, if you will. And Salieri ends saying, all right, God, you're now my enemy. So Luke 9:23 tells us to take up our cross daily, right? So, we know that this life is not going to be filled with ease. Why do we expect a life of ease and blessing, knowing that the Bible specifically tells us that's not going to be the case?
I wonder, and I suspect this to be true, if this is not a uniquely Western problem. We live in a capitalistic society, a meritocracy, if you will, where we believe merit is earned. We work hard, we study hard, we put in the hours, and we earn the things that we get. And so we take that idea, which is not a bad idea, right?
Yeah.
It's good to work hard and study hard and all those things and to make a living and to earn whatever. But we apply that to a religion of grace, and a religion that is teaching we're not of this world. And I've been told that this world will hate us and will suffer, and to be a part of following Jesus is to die to yourself, take up your cross, and all these things. But when we apply that idea of meritocracy, this capitalistic understanding to our Christianity, we think, well, I have earned this. It's like we think of we just want Moses to bring the law down the mountain again, and if I keep the rules, then I earn the reward, right? And so the problem is we don't even kind of live up.
Right.
We don't merit anything.
Well, we don't like that part.
Yeah. But we in our minds, we know that's another thing. We know that.
Yeah.
But in our hearts, we don't really believe it. And so we think, man, I should not be experiencing these bad things, these sufferings, these setbacks, because look what I've done. I've been good. I've been faithful. I've given to the church. I've served Jesus. I deserve better than this.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think in our minds, it's almost like, well, God, if you made us all rich and handsome and famous and happy, look at the world would look at us and be like, wow, let's go be Christians because look how great they have it.
Yeah.
But that's obviously not the case.
Yeah, it makes me think of Paul in 1 Corinthians, maybe, where he says, maybe it's Galatians, I can't remember, but somewhere in Paul, where he says, the message of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to those who are being saved is the gift of God.
Yeah.
So the world is going to look at us and go, I don't want any of that.
Right.
I don't want a cross.
Right.
I don't want to suffer. Right. But to those who it's clicked and we've got it and our hearts have been changed, we're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The way to be first is to be last.
Yeah. Yeah. Very counter Western culture in particular.
Yeah.
That. So
Yeah.
we don't like that. If you're not first, you're last. Yeah. All right. So point 3, doubting God's ways makes life feel meaningless. So verse 13, all in vain have I kept my heart clean and washed my hands in innocence. So is Asaph taking a little too high a view of himself here? Because he seems to be, I kept my heart clean, I'm innocent. Like, is this Asaph thinking a little too highly of himself, or is there something else going on here?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know exactly his heart, right? And so certainly we can be prone to older brother-ishness from the prodigal son, right? We can be prone to self-righteousness, Pharisaism. We can be prone to those things. But let's just take the best motive here.
Yeah.
And I think we can identify with him of the sense of, God, I've tried really hard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I just, for me, I didn't go to a secular college.
Yeah.
Maybe you can speak more to this.
Yeah.
I went to a Bible college, but still I can see enough movies and have enough imagination to think about the kid at college who is watching all of his friends go to the parties, hook up, do drugs, being in a frat house in Hamburg. And if you're a Christian in that context and you're like really committed to not doing those things, right? And you're made fun of and you feel like you're missing out all the time, you can get in Asaph's shoes and be like, well, God, like I've sacrificed quite a bit.
Yeah. Or it almost seems like if the comparison goes from our righteousness to God's, then it's like, okay, I realize that need. But if I'm looking around the frat house, like I'm not a bad person, you know. I'm doing. And yes, Ohio State is a little different than Bible college, so I saw some things.
Hey, the
Ohio State University. We're gonna win this weekend, but a little different than Bible college, and easy to look around and be like
from the Southern Baptist
the
Theological
Southern
Seminary?
Baptist Theological Seminary. That's right. What's your mascot?
At the undergrad level, it's the Bulldogs, the boys Bulldogs. I don't think the seminary has a mascot.
Okay, well, we'll work on that. We'll come up with one. So I think it's easy when we're comparing to others to feel like I'm doing pretty good overall. So
or like you bring it into a work context, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you are respectful to the boss, you work hard, you don't cheat, you don't do underhanded deals. But you see all your coworkers doing those things. They're crappy to the boss. They're talking bad about the boss. They're doing underhanded deals. They're doing shady things. And they're the ones getting the promotion.
Yeah.
And you're like, God, I mean, come on. I mean, I'm doing everything right here.
Yeah.
Throw me a bone.
Right. You owe me this.
You owe me. Like, have I done all the? Here's the root question he's asking is, have I done this in vain?
Yeah.
Was there no reason to my holiness?
Yeah.
My pursuit of holiness.
Yep. We'll get back into that a little bit as we get down to the bottom here. So vanity, vainness, is it all worthless? We'll certainly spend some more time there. So looking at all this, the world seems to be having a great time. So why should we bother with God?
Yeah, he figures us out in the end when he says he discerns their end. One of and I talk about the repetition, right? And we'll get to this. I'm trying not to spoil it.
But you're good.
But when you know the truth, both in your head and in your heart, you've been reminded of it and all these things. You understand that a picture, a moment, does not communicate the end of the whole of what the situation is. And so, yeah, it looks like the kegger is really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Until you see everybody in the morning.
Yeah.
Throwing up and can't get out of bed
Right.
and feel miserable.
Yeah.
And they say, man, we're never doing that again.
Right.
The next
If you help me feel better, I will never do that again.
Yeah. And so it's like when you get spiritual eyes, you begin to see, oh, this is all a mask. They have a bottomless pit in their heart that they are trying to fill. That's what C.S. Lewis says, right? It's we are all what does he call it? Pitiful creatures or something, filling our lives with sex, drugs, and drink. But it's like making mud pies in the slum and God is offering vacation at the sea. And so it's like when you have spiritual eyes, you see, man, that's it's making mud pies, right? It's pointless. It's a Band-Aid. It's sugar. It feels good for a moment.
Yeah.
And so you begin to see, you begin to feel pity for those people. Like that's not happiness. That's not joy. That's sad.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's where we get the opportunity to say, hey, there's something better.
Yeah. We're saying, hey, the way of Jesus is actually better.
Yeah.
It's richer. It's deeper. It's more fulfilling.
Yeah.
It's real.
There's more substance.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good stuff. All right. So we start to kind of turn a corner Your fourth point, worship restores our perspective. So we had the strong start. It's been a struggle. Asaph's looking around saying, what the heck, God? Verses 16 and 17, he gets back into the sanctuary of God. So you make a point, we were created to worship. Why are we so prone to worship the created instead of the creator?
Yeah, well, we're created as worshipers, so we must worship something. It's not an option whether or not we worship. We will worship. And so because of sin and our sin nature and the way we're fallen and corrupted, it is now in our very nature to want to worship the created thing versus the creator. And that's been true from the beginning, right? That's Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve are worshiping at the altar of a talking snake.
Yeah.
Right? And so that has always been the case, and we need that fixed in us. Like that's why when you think about this like head, affections, will thing and like what's on the throne of our heart, it's like we need Jesus to give us a new heart with him on the throne, which changes our thinking, our affections, and our wills. And so, yeah.
Okay. In this part, you mentioned them all. And I asked you, what book was that from? Do you remember what you told me?
You Are What You Love.
You Are What You Love.
J.K. Smith, I think.
Okay. So I asked you about it because I was like, I think I read that, but it wasn't exactly that. So I did find it was a different book that I read. Similar idea. So in the book that I had read, that similar line of thinking in, it says, shopping is now the number one leisure activity in America, usurping the place previously held by religion. Amazon.com is the new temple. The Visa statement is the new altar. Double-clicking is the new liturgy. Lifestyle bloggers are the priests and priestesses. Money is the new God. Jesus has a lot to say on money. Why is it that money in particular seems to be the God that turns so many of us astray?
I don't know if it's so much money as it is what money promises. Right? It's like me and Josh were talking about this earlier. A lot of times when we talk about like our idols, we talk about them like I remember in youth group we talked about TV's my idol, video games are my idol. No, it's not. That is the outworking of your idol, but your idol's underneath that. It's deeper. And so money is the tangible way we see the idol, but there's something underneath it, and it is what money promises, and that's different for different people, right? It could promise status.
Yeah.
It can promise beauty, right? I can buy enough things to make myself look. It can promise popularity. It can promise fulfillment, right? And toys and fun things and gadgets. And so it can promise all sorts of things that are speaking to your heart, like you need me. If you had this, you'll be happy.
That thing's going to be different for everyone.
Yeah. This thing completes me.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
Okay. Yeah, that seems to be a particular pull. It's funny to me that Jesus talked about this thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
And the problem's not it's
not
gotten
away.
any better. So,
No.
Yeah, it's definitely still out there. All right. So fifth and final point, 5-point sermon. I like it. Is that 5-point sermon?
Well, let me go back a little bit.
Yes.
When we talk about this idea of like worship, like we worship everything, and couching like the mall, or social media, whatever, in religious language, my hope is that it helps us see. It's like, oh, that's church, that's worship, but not at church,
right?
It's in a normal, mundane life thing, right? And that's not an over spiritualizing the thing. It's really trying to open our eyes to see. It's like, oh, this is actually more spiritual than I thought it was. Going to the mall or whatever.
Do you think that's intentional? Is that a ploy from Satan to masquerade it as hey, this is just normal. You're just going to the mall and treating yourself. You deserve this.
Certainly is. And I think it's like greed. You don't know you're greedy.
Yeah.
You don't look at someone else and think, man, that guy's greedy.
Has anybody ever come to you in how many years have you been pastor?
Senior pastor, 6.
6. Okay. In ministry for 10.
Over 10.
Has anybody ever come to you and been like, hey, I'm really struggling. I'm greedy.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
No. Yeah. You're like when you commit adultery, you know it, right? You're like, you're not my wife.
Right.
Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
But when you commit read, like you don't see it, right? And so
Yeah.
in the same way, when you are worshiping at the altar of Amazon.com, it doesn't feel like worship to you.
Right.
You're just buying stuff.
Yeah.
And for some people, it's not the buying, it's the saving, it's the hoarding. My security comes from having enough in my bank account that I feel safe,
Yeah.
right? And so you have problems on both extremes there. But the interesting thing here is, I want to use a different word, the word liturgy. That's a word, if you grew up maybe Catholic or Lutheran or something like that, you might be more familiar with that word, but it just means order, right? And this kind of repetitious order. Now, we have liturgies all over the place, right? Our going to the mall is a liturgy. There's an order, and if we do it multiple times, right? Our heart, we change by the things that we repeat. Right? You get up every morning, you make coffee, whatever you do.
Yeah.
Like, there's these repetitions that we do that form us.
Is it almost like habits, liturgy?
Yeah. The habits.
Our service would be a liturgy.
Yes, our service is
We're going to sing. We're going to.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna welcome. We're gonna sing.
We're gonna have a call to worship.
Yeah.
We're gonna sing. We're gonna read our giving prayer. We're going to stand as the scripture is read. We're gonna hear the proclamation of the word of God. We're gonna be invited to respond to that. Like, that's a liturgy. It's an order, and there's all these orders in our life. There's all these liturgies in our life, but the problem is we're not thoughtful about them. And so what forms us more than the random things is the repetitious things.
Yeah.
Daily scrolling, daily watching the news, weekly or monthly going shopping. Like those rhythms actually affect us. And so we got to be actually thoughtful about what are our rhythms. And church also needs to be really thoughtful. And I didn't bring this out because it really wasn't the point of the sermon, but even the way our church liturgy is organized should be really intentional and thoughtful, because it actually, what is changing you more than one sermon or one particular worship service is you going to church every week. Mm-hmm. And the particular liturgy of that church is forming you, right? Like our giving prayer is forming us. Standing for the reading of scripture. Like, that is, without you even thinking about it, giving you a high view of the scriptures. And when we stand out of reverence for reading the words of God. And so, like, passing the peace, like when we have this time of greeting one another. Right? Every church growth book out there will tell you don't do that.
Yeah, people don't like talking to each other and
guests
shaking hands.
don't like, it makes them feel awkward and uncomfortable. But for us, it's actually teaching that if the gospel is true and we can be right with God, then we can be right with each other. And so it's a moment of the repetition of that is actually forming something in us. And so, but here's what I didn't bring out. Churches, if you have too high of your value is too high on like experience, mm-hmm. What are you training your people? What is the liturgy that is building in them, right? That the way to fix things is a mountaintop emotional experience with God, right? And so the lights and the fog and the building up the emotion and the songs that are super emotive, and all that stuff. It's like, okay, so now when I'm struggling, I've got to get that, and it's hard to recreate. And now you're manipulating a situation or your emotions or whatever to get to this place to feel something that's going to fix it. It's like, that's not going to fix it. Right. And so, like, every church liturgy isn't created equally. They're not all just as good. And so having a church liturgy, an order that is actually forming truth in us that isn't just mountaintop, but is, it doesn't matter where we are, right? These things they're anchoring me. Yeah. Does that make sense?
That does. Well, and then if you can't get to the mountain, then I got to go find another church that's going to get me back up there.
That's so true. Yes. And I mean, that's why there's so much church hopping and why churches can get this like competition thing between like, hey, we got to have more technology and better music and better, cool, flashy things, because churches are competing against social media and concert. They're competing against Taylor Swift. Yeah. Right. And so it's like going to church actually should not be like going to a Taylor Swift concert. It's deeper, more real. Yeah. So we don't want it to look like that. We're actually saying this is an ancient, otherworldly thing. Yeah. So stop it. Right. It's training people in the wrong ways.
Yeah. And
the music reflects it too. Right? There's so much new music that's coming out that I refuse to let us sing. Not like Nathan wants to sing. Nathan's is with me on it.
Yeah.
But like, I'll give you an example. There's this super popular song right now called "Speak the Name of Jesus," and the line. I mean, there's all the buzzwords in it, right? Anxiety, tearing down strongholds, and it's like, if you speak the name of Jesus, anxiety's healed. Is basically the premise of the song. If you speak the name of Jesus, all your problems are going to go away. And people love. It's like a top 10 CCLI, top 40 Christian song or whatever. And people love this song, and it's like, it's not true. You don't just go speak the name of Jesus, or it's name it and claim it, right? It's if I name this thing, God has to do it.
It's almost like an incantation.
It is.
If I say this in the right way, and then God has to do
or
even
if the people are like, we're not actually literally saying you say the name of Jesus, but then it's, I have enough faith in Jesus. I believe in Jesus' name and his power. But what if you believe and conjure up all the faith in Jesus and his name and his power and his gospel, and you still have anxiety? Is it your fault or God's fault?
Right.
It's one of yours.
Somebody's fault.
It's somebody's fault.
It ain't my fault. I said the right thing. So
and so the both put you in a depression because either God's too weak or your faith's too weak.
Right.
And so it actually is not grounding us in anything that's true and helpful. It's grounding us in an anti-gospel, anti-biblical truth that is trying to give us answers that don't help.
Yeah.
And so it exasperates the problem. And so our liturgy in our church, going into the sanctuary, the way it fixes us is it reorients us. It's saying, no, you've been lied to all week again.
Yeah.
Here's the truth. Put on these glasses instead. See the world this way. Feel this way. See and behold the beauty of Jesus and the way of Jesus. And now go out into the world with the right glasses on. And then you go and by Tuesday and Wednesday, like, it's starting to weigh on us again, and then we come back on Sunday and we get reoriented.
Yeah. How do we try to maybe keep that? Because we Sunday to Sunday, can be a long time. So, like, what can we do throughout the week to keep the world's clutches from getting into us?
Yeah, let me give you the Bible answers.
Yeah,
first.
Jesus.
Read the Bible.
God.
Like, yeah, Jesus is the answer. But seriously, like, read the scriptures in a way that you actually get them.
Yeah.
Like, don't just read and go, I have no idea what I read.
Get them like you actually comprehend.
Yeah, you comprehend and you meditate on.
Yeah.
Like, stop scrolling for 30 minutes and read the Bible and meditate on it. And do the same passage multiple days. Like, you will mine the depths. Like, I did not see that yesterday. Mm-hmm. Right? So start there. Just a personal experience. And I don't know, probably 4 years ago, there was a particular political podcast that I listened to every single day. And it made me angrier. It made me more afraid. It made me more skeptical, more jaded, carried all these negative emotions. I stopped listening to it. And I generally think a lot of what was said was particularly true. 75% of it was true anyway.
Yeah.
Not one of those extreme, crazy political podcasts, like trying to be balanced and fair. But still, in the balance and fairness, made me feel those things. Stop listening. Pretty quickly, all those feelings went away.
Yeah.
And thought about Jesus more, thought about kindness, and was less worried, less stressed, less anxious. And so, like, just that liturgy was forming me into something, and stopping it fixed a little bit of the problem.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, how can you not? Like, I work in finance, and especially when I'm in the office. I was in the office last week. It's about a 40-minute drive. I'll listen to finance podcast on my way to work. I get myself ready, learning stuff. Yeah, I'm sure. I can recommend it. Find me offline. I'll give you some financial podcast and book recommendations. But then I get to work, and then I'm working, and I'm doing that, and then I find myself, by the end of that week being like, work and like it gets its claws and clutches in you, and it's a good thing, but it certainly can escalate very quickly and become a bad thing. And it's like ultimately this isn't what matters. As much as work matters, like, it's not the ultimate thing. So I got to keep that in its proper place, which is important, and work hard and use the talents that God's given us to his glory. But I can't let it become the ultimate thing where it,
Yeah.
surpasses everything else. And
Yeah. And the big point there is that throughout the week, the things you intake are affecting you.
yeah,
They are changing you. They do matter. And so how much you watch the news, how much you scroll, how much what are you reading, what are you watching? Like those things affect you. And so it's like Sunday to Sunday, set your mind on things above.
yeah,
Like the scriptures tell us, right? Renew your mind. Right? How do you renew your mind? Well, I got to engage my mind.
right.
By thinking on the things and meditating on the things and taking the things that
Yeah.
are above.
And I think starting the day like that is, for me, is key.
Yeah.
There's no set time. Obviously, we're not making rules here, but to start the day like that, like I'm going to set my mind on God. I'm going to meditate on his word, spend some time in prayer.
Here's the interesting thing. I'm a big not legalist guy. Like
Yeah.
I don't like rules.
Right.
But sometimes we can overreact in that, and it's like, hey, I'm a no rules guy, but then you don't do anything.
Right. Yeah. I have no plan for my day. It just kind of happens to
Yeah.
me. And I end the day and I'm like, oh, I didn't have time for any of the things that truly matter.
Yeah. One of the most powerful illustrations I've seen on this topic is a guy who took a bucket and he had these big boulders, and then he had medium-sized rocks, and then he had these little rocks. And at first, he put all the little rocks in, and he could get some of the medium-sized rocks in and could get none of the big ones in. He dumped it all out in the same bucket. If he put the big rocks in first,
Yep.
and then the medium rocks, all the little rocks fit into place. He got it all in. And it's just like, hey, the big things that matter, do them first. You'll find time to do everything else. But if you do all the other things first, you won't find time for the big things.
Yep. So intentionality matters.
Yes. Have a plan.
Have a plan.
Have a plan, Stan.
All right. So point 5, the worship of God brings clarity and comfort. I like those things, especially this time of year, a little clarity, a little comfort, sitting on the couch under a blanket.
Yeah.
This reminded me, he mentioned how, vain is any of it matter, doesn't mean anything. It reminded me of Ecclesiastes, where that word is mentioned a lot. So Ecclesiastes starts off with vanity of vanities, all is vanity. So that's similar to what we see a few verses back. But after living it up like no one in human history, Solomon, did he read Ecclesiastes? Yep. Okay, so Solomon, richer than you and I will ever be, more land, more orchards and vineyards, and
more women
than we'll ever have.
I only want one.
I only want one. Yeah, that's right.
The one I got.
Yes, it's good clarification. Does all of this, and at the end of it all, he says, fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man, for God will bring every deed into judgment. So Asaph finally saw, what truly mattered. While the world was doing what it wanted, fake diamonds that don't stand up to testing, it's all a mask, I think you called it earlier. So we touched on this a little bit just a few minutes ago, but how do we keep our focus on the eternal and not on the temporary?
We keep it on the eternal and not the temporary. Well, when you go into the sanctuary, when you experience that liturgy, and it is reorienting our heart, that's the beginning of the process, right? Like that is reminding us to see the bigger picture, see the eternal, not the temporary. And when you're in community, right? And it's like when you show up to church, or if you go to a church where it's I call it fast food Christianity. Like it's so big, you can show up, nobody knows who you are, you leave. You go get your Jesus on and leave, and that ain't gonna cut it. Like you got to be walking and doing life with other people that are also looking at eternal things and not temporary things they're constant reminders throughout the week. Right? As I'm talking to those people, as I'm in small group with those people, as I'm interacting with those people, like we're in this thing together.
Yeah.
Right. Like, hey, so and so's got something going on. We got to help them out. We got to care for them. We got to pray for them. We got to whatever. My thoughts are on those things. I've got less time to be consumed about, what's going on in worldly temporary things. And so the comfort and clarity comes from remembering, man, God's been with me. He's got me through so much. He's walked with me. When things seemed dark, he was there and got me through when I thought there was no way possible. And so I know he's going to be there still. And clarity on those temporary things are temporary for us. They pass away. And I was telling Josh earlier, it's like when I was in college, I remember this video game came out that I was really wanting. And kind of made a deal with myself of, if I get it now, I won't get any of my work done. And so if I can get all my work done, for the next week or whatever, the semester or whatever it was, then I'll go get it. So I got all my work done over a couple of days. Then I didn't want the game anymore. It was like all the dopamine and hype had passed. I was like, I actually want that?
Right.
Was I just like really excited for
a minute?
Because my feed was hyping me up about it.
Yeah.
And so I think the same is true. It's like we can get really caught up in what's going on right in front of our faces. If we can step back and get a little perspective, we'll realize, oh, that's not as big of a deal as I thought it was.
Yeah. I mean, how many things were super important to you 10 years ago that you're like, I haven't thought about that in
do not care.
Yeah, haven't thought about that in years. So that's some sage advice, much like Captain Kirk gave to Yoda. Right? No, I that's what you and Ryan, I didn't want the people to miss Ryan too much, so I thought I'd throw in a Star Wars reference. So.
Captain Kirk, get out of here.
All right. Any final thoughts as we wrap up this week's recap?
I don't think so, but man, it's been fun having you on.
Yeah, no, it's been a good time. So
thanks for
I've
jumping
had fun. It's been a good time. So, well, thanks for joining us on the recap. We hope this conversation has encouraged you to keep striving to make Jesus essential in every aspect of your life. If you aren't a part of our church family, you're missing out. We'd love to meet you on a Sunday morning. We gather for worship at 10:30 a.m. For more information, you can go to myfellowship.church.